Hello. Welcome to Season XV of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, we're watching movies from the 90s and talking about how they fit into the larger picture of 90s horror and how each year from that decade stacks up against the others. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So here we are, starting our first week of reviewing movies from 1999 as we continue to work our way through the 90s. And it's kind of weird that the end is in sight. But I'm excited because we got some stuff left to do. We're going to go through the next couple weeks. We're going to go back and re-examine all the rankings. We may have a couple little audibles to call towards the end. We got some stuff coming up. So just get excited, hang with us. And if you haven't been listening to this whole season so far, go back and check it out because we really have found some good, sort of underrated, less well-known 90s horror movies, which was the goal.
Yeah, we definitely found some that I think are in my favorites list for sure. It's a perfect decade, 90s.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, not a single miss so far.
None.
But yeah, it's been interesting just because the 90s have this bad reputation that it is sequels, remakes, low budget, low quality, unoriginal horror. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've proved that it had more to offer than that. But part of what we're doing is that each week the movies that we pick have to meet certain rules. And those rules are that the movie can't be a sequel, it can't be a remake, it can't be a movie that made it over $100 million at the box office, and it can't be one that we previously reviewed. So in finding the movie for this week, the ones that were ineligible were Candyman, Day of the Dead, Children of the Corn, 666, Isaac's Return, From Dusk Till Dawn 2, Texas Blood Money, House on Haunted Hill, which was a remake, The Rage, Carrie 2, Ring 2, and Warlock 3, The End of Innocence. That's really not a bad list as far as sequels compared to a lot of the other years that we've talked about from the 90s so far. But then we also have this list of movies that we've already covered from 1999, which are Terror Firmer, Audition, Blair Witch Project, and The Haunting. So if you take the list of movies that I just read that were ineligible, and then take the list of the movies that we already did, and then take the list of the horror movies from 1999 that are available on streaming, and then you subtract the ones that made over $100 million at the box office, you don't have much. So we had to bend the rules a little bit this week, and that I think is going to be okay because I'm going to pitch it in a way that makes it sound more deliberate than it really was.
I like it.
We did Sleepy Hollow, and Sleepy Hollow made a lot of money. Yeah. It had a lot of star power. It did well, and it did significantly more than $100 million at the box office. However, a theme that we have seen as we've made our way through the 90s was this idea of kind of like fairy tale horror, or like taking these ideas from sort of these old folk tales and then turning them into horror movies. Mm-hmm. And this feels like a thing we need at the end of this season to sort of wrap up what the, I guess, pinnacle of that was. Because, we sat through Leprechaun and Rumpelstiltskin and Pinocchio's Revenge. I feel like we get to watch Sleepy Hollow now, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, hey, can we have one that actually revolves around the story?
Yeah.
And the answer is we deserve it. Yeah. Because, listen, listener, you deserve it too. Whatever you're wanting to get, just go get it.
Yeah. Take what you want from life.
But just know, chlamydia stays, man.
Yeah. So yeah, this movie was pretty successful. And I did not know anything about it other than it was Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci. Mm-hmm. I'd never seen it. I'd never really heard anything about it or read anything about it. I've seen the name in lists of like 90s horror movies. Had you seen this one before?
I have, but it was relatively recent, like within the past, I would say 2 or 3 years.
I was waiting for you to say days.
Yeah, it was like real recent. I mean, yeah, that's why we're doing the podcast, right?
Yeah.
No, Kate it was one of Kate or Todd's favorites, and or not favorites, but she just mentioned she liked it, and so we watched it one day, and I'm sure it was one that she had told me that we should do for the podcast, so it kind of works out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of feel like you were holding out on me a little bit. Because if I knew that Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, Christopher Walken, Dumbledore, Chancellor Palpatine, and Count Dooku himself were in this movie, I would have insisted that we watched it a long time ago.
Yeah, I think from that alone, it doesn't. We could just pick that we watched this movie. It doesn't matter how much they made.
Yeah,
and also it's our podcast.
Yeah, and also we hadn't had a kid sidekick in a while, so like this one really, yeah, checked a lot of boxes. It's going to be a fitting beginning of the end of our season on 90s horror. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we can get into it's probably better if we just don't talk about the Weinsteinian age gap between the 36-year-old Johnny Depp and the 19-year-old Christina Ricci in this movie details.
I love it.
In 1999, Paramount Pictures brought us Sleepy Hollow, a supernatural horror film based on a short story from 1820 by American author Washington Irving. Sleepy Hollow tells the story of police constable Ichabod Crane, who is sent to the small town of Sleepy Hollow to investigate a series of beheadings. Whilst there, he meets a seedy cast of characters who all live in fear of the ominous Headless Horseman. Will Ichabod unravel the mystery of Sleepy Hollow in time to figure out what's really going on and save himself and his inappropriately young girlfriend? Only one way to find out. Rent this movie on Amazon Prime Video. Also, in case anyone else cares, this movie was made on a budget of somewhere between 70 and 100 million and made over 200 million at the box office. No? Just me? Okay, fine. I find that stuff interesting. I'm going to include it. And I'm done with this intro anyway.
So, I have a fact for this movie. Did you know Christopher Walken was wearing contacts and prosthetic teeth? Those aren't his real teeth in this film.
I don't understand.
I know. It sounds weird. Those pointy things that you saw in his mouth, those are fake, Daniel. They might as well have been George Washington's.
I always just assumed he was wearing fake teeth in all his other movies.
Or my papa's. He didn't have any teeth.
Or his wouldn't?
I don't know, but he was a lot younger than I thought. Oh, yeah, I thought that happened to really... That's neither here nor there. He had fake teeth and fake contacts.
Breaking news. So this one...
It's also done by Tim Burton. Just kind of tripped me out.
Yeah, this is a very, very Tim Burton-y Tim Burton movie. Yeah, he definitely has a style of his own. He's like the horror Wes Anderson. Like, you can spot it a mile away.
Yeah, 100%.
So this one is interesting to talk about from the horror perspective. And it kind of goes back to some of the stuff that we've talked about with Nightmare Before Christmas, where... a lot of it didn't feel scary so much as it was just kind of like dark and ominous. It was almost more like a vibe. But I feel like this one also did have like legit scary scenes and some gory effects and things that made it. I mean, like, I think you would definitely call this horror. It just was kind of a unique experience, I think.
Yeah. This is kind of a prime example of what I would consider like a fall Halloween horror film. If you're a longtime listener, I've definitely been saying that forever. Like, the atmosphere that this movie puts off throughout the whole movie, it's kind of like Witches in a way, where it's kind of like overcast or dark and just like, feels like fall. I don't know how to explain it, but you're watching this, you're like, this movie just feels like you're watching a Halloween. That's this movie for me as well. It has to do with the trees, I assume, and all the leaves on the ground, but still, in my opinion, this is a good Halloween October movie to watch. Movie to watch in October before Halloween.
Yeah, I agree, and I think another thing that beyond just like kind of setting the feeling of the movie, that was also really effective because having it more dark and foggy meant that the CG didn't stand out as much. Like it wasn't like they were trying to superimpose the sea creature in a brightly lit room where it just looked obviously wrong. It was more like you could see kind of the shadows and the way things were moving within kind of the darkness, and that made it stand out a lot less, the things that were special effects, which meant that the special effects didn't have to be as good. And so we've talked over and over again about how movies don't have to have good special effects. They just have to understand how to use them. And I feel like this one used it well in a way that was consistent with a visual aesthetic that amplified the feeling that the movie was going for. And that's just like good movie making. Like it felt very cohesive to me as far as like all the different ways the movie was made supported what the movie was doing and trying to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that has to do with like budget, or like it's just the director, or I mean, it's a huge question, I feel like, but like, what do you think plays in part for that? It's just combo of all the above? Because I feel like we've had low budget films that did great explaining film, like explaining the story and putting it together.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that it's really about knowing what you have to work with, and then having somebody kind of oversee the vision of making that deliver what it's trying to do effectively.
Gotcha.
So I think a lot of it is director, maybe some like producer, but then also just the capability of the people doing the more technical jobs on the movie as well.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of got into this earlier. But one thing that I did really appreciate about this was they gave backstory for the Headless Horseman, which obviously Pinocchio, Rumpelstiltskin, and Leprechaun just completely ignored. So it felt nice that the story was more cohesive. And, that there were enough twists, I think, to kind of keep you involved. So overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like the story or the plot in this one was an asset, not a liability, which was a nice change of pace from some of the other ones we watched.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I have to add to that, because I just agree completely. I think that, you know what? I'm not going to do it. Not going to add to that.
Okay.
Okay, I got to tell everyone something.
Good.
Listen, I edited the last podcast. That's all I did was just like reiterate what you said. I don't want to do that anymore.
I think that's called conversation.
I'm pretty sure it's called conversation. I did it again. There's something. Yeah, there's something about these. This is still going back to the atmosphere of it, but I'm not talking the physical, like fall theme. But I know not a ton of people are fans of The Village, but The Village was also another example. If you've seen The Village, you haven't seen this, or vice versa. It's similar in the sense of like watching this, like you really kind of do feel like you're watching like a story back in whenever it was 1800s, or I don't know when this was set. 1799. So it's, it really does seem like that's the case. And I'm not a historian, and I'm not going to watch any videos of like, actually, you wouldn't have this type of carriage back then. But like just having the atmosphere alone, it just feels like you're at home, or that you're in the right place, so you could kind of let your guard down and trust what's the process of what's happening. They're explaining where this bad guy kind of came from. That's cool. That's what we need for this. First time in a few weeks, I feel like we actually like kind of knew what was going on in a way from the beginning. I know there was twists and turns in this, but still, there's, I guess my main beef with it is like, I just sometimes feel like Johnny Depp is just the same character over and over, but I don't like to necessarily talk about acting. So it's, it's neither here nor there, I guess, but that's what I would say my biggest beef with it would be.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to that for sure, but also I feel like that character fit into this story and the way that it worked. So, yeah.
I think it's his voice is what I'm more so mean. Like I hear the same, because he's doing a voice, and it's the same voice as like what I heard with Charlie and Chocolate Factory, or what I heard with Edward Scissorhands. Like it's just like I don't know. It just it's just a little funky, but
yeah. One thing that I did appreciate about this movie was the scenes with the Headless Horseman were all pretty good. Like, let's stop and focus on the horror of this moment type scenes. It wasn't just like happening in the background. There was no like humor to it. Basically, I'm thinking about this kind of in reference or in comparison to the movie that we watched last week, where this one felt more intent on delivering the horror elements. And because of that, I feel like it had a lot of really memorable scenes. And I think what I'm realizing is that in good horror movies, there are scenes that stand out in your mind after the fact because it was such a good buildup and they got you like emotionally hooked and then they delivered on the horror. And so like there was that first scene where just in the opening where the guy gets hunted down by the horseman. And then there's the one where the horseman kills the magistrate who had tried to help Ichabod while he's trying to leave. And that was pretty intense. And then there was like the scene with the witch in her house in the woods. And then they find the death tree with all the heads inside. And then my favorite scene of the movie was when the Headless Horseman invaded the Ginger household. And like that kid was hiding under the floorboards and you were kind of like seeing what was happening from his perspective. Yeah. Like that was a legit scary horror scene. And I really liked it. Like I thought that when this movie chose to go that route, it didn't let up and it was good. And even though this had kind of this almost like fairy tale fantasy feel to it, it still delivered on what I want out of horror movies while also having an interesting story.
Yeah. I think the word we're looking for is whimsical.
I was going to say that I appreciated the lack of anachronisms.
Fucking Google it. If you think about it as, with this film as well, like, I think it was like a smart, I have a feeling that like other directors or like producers or studios may have been kind of kicking themselves in the ass like when this one came out, because if you think about like the concept of, Sleepy Hollow, like the Headless Horseman, like if you can get a good shot, of him on his horse, if the horse is like rearing back or whatever the case is, like just that silhouette alone can be pretty terrifying because you're already on a tall horse. You got this bigger guy, no head, like it's trippy. And then you throw in the sword. But so you have this whimsical film, great silhouette happening, just like great design, great, good shots, I guess what I'm trying to say. And on top of that, you have the Headless Horseman literally slicing people in half with a sword, and you in a way got to see it go down. And it's just like, this is great. Like this is I don't want to say perfect, but like this is amazing. Like it's like a rated R Edward Scissorhands film, or like that kind of thing. I am a Tim Burton fan. Batman, one of the best films ever, but like I think that concept, like, and I realize that I am just reiterating what you're saying, but like it's really important to note, like this is the fact that they were able to pull that off in 1999 with the special effects that we had in 1999, with the type of year we were having, or type of decade we were having in the 90s. Like this kind of sets the bar pretty high for the horror films to come out after. It was definitely a mainstream, what I technically feel like horror, and I'm just kind of going off a budget with that and how many actual actors I recognized in it. But like you're saying, like the scenes where what I would quote unquote kind of consider iconic scenes, like when you first in Event Horizon, when you see like the core, whatever I don't remember what they call it at this point, but you kind of see the core like working. Yeah. I guess a big shot, like that's similar feel where it's like, I'm going to remember the silhouettes of the Headless Horseman going on. But in a way it was almost like an adventure film. Fantasy is probably the best way to sum that up. And it's just, I think I just really, really like the fact that it's fantasy and adventure horror, because it feels like a rated R Edward Scissorhands, I guess I would say Princess Bride.
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like it definitely did have some of those types of influences as much as it had horror influences.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of an interesting thing to put together and have something good come out.
Yeah.
And one of the things, getting back to exactly what you were saying, I think that there's something to be said for Hollywood movies, even though we usually say things like, oh, it had a Hollywood ending and not a horror ending. And we do that like as an insult. But with this movie, it was definitely a Hollywood movie. It had a huge budget. It had, a star-studded cast, but it was also really easy to watch and it kept my attention and it had some good horror moments. So,
it was rewatchable.
I think that is okay. And I think that I'm glad these types of movies happen and that they make money and that people keep investing in creative horror movies. So,
yeah. And, it's a detective film too. And like, we're also figuring out things as they're figuring it out throughout the film. So like, when Ichabod Crane's character, when he realized like, hey, he wasn't coming after us. Like he was trying to ignore us. He was going after someone specific. Right. Like it just all kind of like you're just literally dissecting this through as he is. And like the film that we did last week with Deep Rising, like what we heard quite a bit at the end was like, I have a plan. He didn't talk about the plan, but he was just, I have a plan. I have a plan. With this one, he was like, I'm still figuring this out. Like maybe it's not him, but this is why I think it's him. Like it's just discussing that. And it's like, as a viewer with a movie that has a bunch of twists and turns, like it's good to keep the viewer in that situation or like abreast of what's going on. And that's where we were with this.
Yeah.
But that kid, when the Headless Horseman barreled through the floor and pulled that kid out. Oh gosh, man. Terrifying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that was definitely if you were watching this movie like on cable in the early 2000s and you were maybe a little too young for it, it would scared the crap out of you.
And I mean, like even when Christopher Walken has the head on, like those teeth and like all like that was just gnarly in itself. And so, God, R.I.P. to any kid that watched this in the early 2000s.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, I was like pleasantly surprised by this one, obviously, from the way that we're talking about it. Yeah. So, I'm glad that we watched it. Especially because I have a feeling whatever we watch next week is going to be pretty rough.
Well, we could just break the rules again. I'm just saying.
Right. And the thing is, I actually had one pulled up, like I had made up my mind, and then I accidentally closed the tabs. Like I closed the browser window with all the tabs for that one, so I'm going to have to rediscover. But this was... I don't know. It felt to me like the culmination of kind of 90s movie making in that it was like, okay, we're finally figuring out how to use CG effectively when there's not too much of it, like how to make it blend into the movie better. Right. We are managing the pace of this movie well. We are incorporating this sort of folk tale into a bigger blockbustery type thing. We've assembled the right actors to pull off a somewhat ambitious period piece, and we're also going to throw in like that Tim Burton weirdness. We have a kid sidekick. I mean, it just had everything going for it that I want out of a 90s movie. So yeah.
What did you think about like the end of this one though? Real quick, because like even though I'd watched this before, I somehow forgot how it ended. So I felt like I was maybe keeping more eyes on that piece. Mm-hmm. So like,
so are you talking specifically about like
when
him getting the head back and taking like Lady Van Tassel with him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, her dad did do wrong, right? I kind of missed that piece when watching it. Because
what do you mean?
Like, he had done something, but I don't remember what he had done. So Christina Ricci and Johnny Depp kind of had a little falling out because he was saying that her father was a potential suspect. Mm-hmm. And then right before like the ending, like they find out that he had done something, like there was like drama going on within like the village or something like that. That's what it was. Never mind. I remember that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that all of the men in the village were sort of like self-serving
sleazeballs
kind of politician. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know that any of them had I mean, like, obviously, you know, somebody was cheating and there was everything going along with that. But I think it was more along the lines of just, these aren't good people.
Yeah.
But they're not the ones who are behind murders. Like, they're a much more like natural world, kind of good old fashioned corruption type people.
And then they find out it was the twin all along.
Yeah.
They get his skull back. Old Depp tosses it. Perfect spiral.
Yeah.
To a 10-yard slant. Headless Horseman, no longer headless, catches it. Boom. Pop, pop.
Takes it all the way to the house.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's a good film. I love it.
I had fun with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it definitely was one where I had no trouble paying attention, and it didn't feel like it was on very long because I was like, oh yeah, I'm into this. This is fun.
Yeah, I didn't get bored with it either, too. So when I wasn't paying attention, this is my nice way of saying I had to take a pee and I didn't want to pause it because I'm not about that life. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I'm with you on this, man. First off, you have a film that feels like Halloween, I'm in. Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's horror or not, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, and what's really crazy to me is that 1999, we've only reviewed one movie from 99 in this season, but if you count all the stuff that we did before, 99's got Audition, The Blair Witch Project, The Haunting, Terror Firmer, and now Sleepy Hollow. So just on sheer numbers alone, that blows away half of
was a good year.
the ones we've covered. Yep. So, yeah. But yeah, I want to get one that's kind of like a left turn from all that for next week. And I had one picked out. I will figure out what it was and then send that to you shortly after this. But we're on the quarter pole.
Crazy.
Is that the start or the end?
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
We're in the red zone on this season. It's getting close.
Yeah. And so what we're going to do is finish out 99 next week with Daniel's movie. We're going to also, there's going to be an episode where we're putting these in official order. And then maybe a couple surprises.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
We'll see.
There will be.
I have thoughts.
I know. I need time before I come up with next season, so there's got to be.
Exactly. Y'all might be familiar with a concept from the music world called filler.
Yeah. We could do that. Here's an instrumental for you fellers. Yeah.
Hey, you know what doesn't take up much studio time to record?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Complete throwaway material. Speaking of which, 99 has recently shown up as on my radar as a wildly underrated year for music. Because you know how I had that epiphany a while back where it was like, oh, wow, was 2014 like the best year for music in a decade? I remember that, yeah. And I made that playlist and it was just like, man, the hits just kept on coming. I've been seeing stuff from 99 over and over and over, and I never really stopped to think about that being like an influential year for my music tastes. Yeah. I mean, but it's almost like a joke now. It's almost like, man, I'm in the mood to listen to this album. I pull it up. What year was, what was it? New Kind of Army by Anti-Flag? Oh, 99. Of course it was, you know? Like just...
That was too early for Squad 5-0, wasn't it?
Oh, no, man.
Well, was that 90? Because I thought it was around that time.
Yeah, no, they were, they started in the 90s.
Okay. Yeah. I've been on a Squad 5-0 kick lately. It came up on our playlist. I've just been on it since
97 was their first album. So.
Okay. You know what came out in 1999 as well?
What's that?
Hey, now you're an all-star. Here's your game. Now get laid.
Bars, man.
I think that's it. Living the Vida Loca. You kidding me? Smooth by Santana.
Yeah.
Every Morning by Sugar Ray.
Did not know that was Sugar Ray, but I believe it.
Still Dre by Dr. Dre.
69 Love Songs by the Magnetic Fields.
Shut the fudge up. Are you serious?
Yeah. That's the one that got me on it, actually.
I like your twisted point of view, Mike.
Keep It Like a Secret by Built to Spill.
I like your questioning eyebrows.
Emergency and I by the Dismemberment Plan.
You whisper softly something to me. Thank God you stopped because I don't remember what's next. Thank God.
Clarity by Jimmy Eat World. I'm gonna start I'm gonna start a playlist, but like these are like huge albums, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's going to be fun to go back and do that as part of our continued fascination with the 90s.
Yeah.
But nobody's listening to this for music.
Well,
what's less relevant than music?
Wait, hold on. We did the Ice Nine Kills episode. That we could have a musician friend.
I'm still apologizing for that.
No, man. That's good.
Nah, it's all good. It's all fine. Everything's fine.
Hey, here's the thing, too. If you're still listening to this, Daniel, I say we just leave this in. Let's just.
I was planning on it. Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I mean, anybody can stop listening anytime. Most people stop listening before they even start one of our episodes, so, you know.
No one will ever love you, honestly. God, magnetic fields, man.
Yeah. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.